I want to thank everyone for coming out and resting your feet, more importantly, I guess, and coming to our presentation here. My name's Brian Crump, and this is Chris Midget. Chris is our president, and I'm our vice president of sales and marketing at EnviroPAK. I'm here today to share a little bit about molded pulp and the benefits of kind of integrating it into your packaging playbook. I'll show you some things how something that's been around for over 100 years is actually having a pretty big resurgence in the industry today. I want to kind of take just a quick second to give you a little video that explains the process, how we actually manufacture it in our facility, and kind of how we're taking it to the next level as a packaging option. So it's about a minute here, but it'll give you kind of a peek inside one of our facilities.
EnviroPAK has successfully taken a proven, eco-friendly technology using the same process used to make egg cartons and made it a viable solution for packaging in the 21st century. This option not only provides eco-friendly results, but also an economic advantage. Unlike plastic and resins that are susceptible to unstable market cost, our packaging saves you money because it requires less assembly, is static-free, leads to savings in transportation and warehouse space, is unaffected by temperature conditions, and won't crack at low temperatures. Molded pulp offers shock and vibration protection, meeting UPS, FedEx, and ISTA standards. Over the last decade, business priorities and environmental concerns have changed. Today, going green is not only good for business, but good for the bottom line. EnviroPAK uses advanced 3D modeling and CNC technology for end-to-end tooling design. Our in-house design experts and tooling center allows us to take a product from concept to production with cost efficiency, speed, and precision. When choosing a partner for your packaging needs, choose one that saves you money, is better for the environment, and will be with you from concept to completion.
So it's amazing how something that has actually been around and patented over 100 years ago is finding a resurgence in the packaging industry today. Little did Mr. Kais know that over 100 years later how revolutionary the product would still be. So molded pulp, as we said, was born about 100 years ago, and at one time it was basically dedicated to the packaging of eggs. And it's amazing how when we start explaining that to people, they realize that they probably have some molded pulp in their refrigerator at home. We've probably grabbed a couple 4-cup carriers or more from Starbucks around the corner or McDonald's. That same process, basically, what we're seeing is how it's being done in a variety of new industries and how you can actually, as I said, introduce molded pulp into any one of those industries. So as you can kind of see here, we've got several examples of how molded pulp is finding its way into those industries. These are industries that not long ago probably didn't realize the advantages of molded pulp. And beyond that, we can see where these industries are beginning to use it in multiple applications within their markets. So the question is, what are the benefits of molded pulp and why should I consider it as part of my packaging playbook and consider it like some of those industries out there? So first and foremost is, of course, the saves you money. So the almighty dollar is a driver in anybody's decision. And as we go through, we'll kind of look at some of the ways that it does drive that almighty dollar and save you some money. We found that it's very price stable. It's also very space savings. We'll kind of get into each one of these a little bit more. It's very time saving. Can be very protective, which is of course a big question that anybody asks when making a packaging decision. You know, is it going to protect my product equally or better than my current packaging material? And of course, the biggest benefit that we're seeing and why the industry is seeing a big resurgence is its sustainability. So what do I mean when I indicate molded pulp is price stable? Because the raw material has been relatively stable over a number of years, comparing that to materials that see a pretty volatile market increase, such as some of the resin markets that are out there, AB chemicals, you know, you're subjecting yourself to possible market fluctuations as often as a monthly or quarterly or, you know, more frequent basis. Molded pulp is able to actually maintain a little bit more stable cost barrier or cost stability there to where you're not going to see those kind of price fluctuations. EnviroPAK goes as far as actually being able to provide a 1-year price guarantee on new projects. What do we mean when we say space savings? Excuse me. As you can kind of see here, here's a number of trays that have been stacked up. Typically we'll see anywhere from a 1 to a 7 ratio of molded pulp versus any sort of pre-molded, something like say an EPS pack. That's a big advantage when you start looking at things such as the transportation from the point of manufacture to the warehouse line, so the number of times that you're moving pallets to the work queue, the amount of space that you're occupying in a warehouse or in the queue stage. All these are things that we have found begin to contribute to that almighty dollar, that bottom line, and how molded pulp can save you money. Time saving. This is really a big area where we're seeing a big resurgence in molded pulp. There's a tremendous number of people out there that really like a paper-based packaging material. So they've tended to go with die-cut corrugated. Well, volumes tend to increase. They tend to throw more labor at assembling some of those complicated die-cut corrugated solutions. When you choose a molded pulp solution, you can typically get, of course, that paper option, but the product is actually arriving in a pre-molded, repeatable shape. So it's not a situation where one operator may actually fold something over compared to the other operator from the first shift compared to the second shift. That's a big portion of what we are seeing as an advantage in molded pulp, is that repeatability that we get from that first part to that 100th part to that 1000th part to the 1,000,000th part. Performance that you see on that first part, you're going to see on the last part. And when we talk about that, you've got the repeatability motion where repetitive labor or carpal tunnel, trying to put a pack together. Molded pulp, again, arrives into the facility ready to drop the product in. Gives you also the ability to do some complex shapes that maybe you couldn't do with a fold-up solution. What we also see here is an ability to actually improve the presentation of the product. As Apple likes to call it, that Apple out-of-the-box experience. We can create cavities underneath the parts to where that first component that you see is, in essence, that kind of money product that we as a consumer are purchasing. Protective, of course, is the big thing that we see in our industry. We're very often asked, hey, how's this product going to perform compared to my existing one? I'm going to do a drop test, or I want to do a transit test of some sort. What we have found is that molded pulp is able to withstand even the harshest of customers, shipping and supply chains, from a UPS or FedEx to any one of those possible scenarios. Our engineers are extremely skilled at basically taking what that supply chain is and then engineering that solution around what you want that to do. That's a big aspect of what we see. The material is actually also very good when we talk about how it comes in contact with other materials. It's not very abrasive. It is paper, but it is soft enough, it tends to be, that when we talk about how any sort of adverse effect, we've been able to get a number of projects away from using a protective poly film or even like a layer film. So, big aspect there. The product is great for things like glass. We've seen it pack your fluorescent light bulb trays and items like that for years as well. So fragile glass items like wine bottles, stemware, things like that that are very delicate and require a lot of protection. Of course, we've all probably received a device like an electronic tray or a small household appliance. Most of those things are even being packed in molded pulp as well. You can kind of see how small, delicate plastic parts are very well protected with molded pulp. Sustainable. Our material is made from 100% pre-consumer recycled newspaper. EnviroPAK actually repurposes over 20 tons of that every day. Comes out to about 5,000 tons every year. As I said, it is 100% pre-consumer material. More importantly though, because molded paper is made from newsprint or even are corrugated in some manufacturers' point of view, it can be recycled typically in a curbside environment. So compare that to some of the other materials out there where you can't actually recycle it at the curbside, and if you're doing something in a consumer-oriented situation, it can be separated and placed into a single stream recycling content. What that means is, of course, that it's meeting the expectations of many of our global customers, environmental standards and sustainability standards. So who are some of the candidates and opportunities that we're seeing switch to molded pulp? Of course, the competitive materials that we very often see switched are ones like expanded polystyrene, foam, plastic, thermoform plastics. One of the reasons is when we do thermoform plastics, we can get a tremendous amount of complexity in that draw that may require a thicker gauge plastic. So when you start looking at that kind of trade-off, you can tend to find some advantages where molded pulp would be a good solution. We talked about the high labor costs as well. You know, the cost of labor continues to go up, and there are incidences of carpal tunnel. You know, you're trying to actually increase the speed through the lines. Going to a molded paper solution gives you a great option in that respect. Looking to convert to a green, eco-friendly solution, we're seeing a tremendous amount of kind of marketing interest, both from the kind of Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies that are asking us a little bit more about the material. Hey, how does that fit into my sustainability, guidelines? My customers are asking me. They want me to be more than just a recycled bug on the product. They want me to expand that beyond just one portion of it. And when we say moderate to high volume, again, one of the reasons is this is a tooled and engineered product, so it does require some justification to kind of get into it. And so that's one of the reasons for that. To learn a little bit more about the process, I invite you to take a look at our website, or more importantly, right behind us here at 5837 is our booth. We've got a tremendous amount of the products there. Feel free to take a look. We can see some of the tooling processes and what we do and how we turn basically a product that we use every day on the USA Today and your newspaper and turn it into a packaging solution for tomorrow's packaging. So does anybody have any questions? Yes? Again, it's a situation where you've got to look at the justification in your packaging requirement. So we have volumes that we do in the excesses of millions and millions. The lowest opportunity that we do is about 2,000 units a year. Yeah. So. Yeah. Excuse me? Sure. Sorry about that. Can't go behind those. The question was about traceability. So the way that we actually are tracing the product in our facility, every time that we bring one of those 20 tons of newspaper into our facility, basically we're tagging that. We know where that product came from. Then when we go to pulp that process, we then start breaking that tonnage down in our facility. We can then keep track when it was produced, at what hour, and in essence we can begin isolating it to not necessarily an exact piece, but within a truckload or less probably. So.
Talks about pricing. So in a market where newspapers are going down and digital media is going up, how do you project that?
Sure. So the question was, how do we talk about the price stability when newsprint is going down and the digital media is going up? One of the things that we see is that we still turn away excessive tons of newsprint every day. And the reason for that is that when you look at that digital media, of course, it is a situation where the USA Today or CNN Today is online, basically, but there's still a tremendous amount of opportunity where that substrate of a newspaper is still one of the lowest cost of media to get product printed and to market. So things like instruction manuals for automotive, a lot of the kind of testing criteria, the Kaplan testing. Think about the last time you walked into a fast food restaurant. Typically there's a couple little stands right inside the door that have some printed apartment guides or car guides or whatever. All that's typically printed on a newspaper substrate. So whether or not it's telling you what today's news is or the apartments available for the next 30 days, we don't really care as a source in that respect. So we have not seen that source reduction yet. We are doing things to kind of expand some of the fibers that we can actually introduce into it. But when it comes to how we as a manufacturer produce, we know how molded pulp is produced or how it performs when using that fiber. So when you begin kind of changing that fiber, you begin changing some of the performance, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And so we're continuing to kind of stick with that at this point. So, any other questions? Yeah, another one.
So you mentioned performance. How does it withstand under extreme conditions?
Sure. So the question was, how does it perform under high temperature and I guess assume cold, extreme cold. The high humidity thing, we're in St. Louis, Missouri. Average summer for us is about 98% humidity on on every given July day. But to that point as well, we've done applications where the product is going into a highly automated facility where the dimensional tolerance and the automation equipment, we're trying to hit picking points basically of less than 3/8 of an inch on a tray. And basically we're, on millions and millions of trays a week, we're hitting those kind of tolerances, no matter if it's, July with 100 degrees, 100 something, near almost 100% humidity, or it's the middle of December where it's, sub-zero. That same facility is working that same operation. What we're doing is we're taking that newspaper that's coming into us at an ambient moisture content, we're repurposing it, and it's coming back out of our facility at that same ambient condition. And we haven't seen it where it actually has any negative performance unless you be in saturation of it. So, if that sea container, got a leak in it and begins supporting it in there, then you're dramatically changing the performance like you would in any other material. So, but to that point, one of the reasons why several in the industry, such as the produce, use the molded paper piece is that it actually will take some of that moisture in, say, an apple that may go through a very high up and down low situation where you would create condensation, and rather than pooling it in the bottom of that support or the bottom of that cap, it actually will kind of wick itself out and protect that product. So, Sure. So the question was, tell us about our premium finish. So EnviroPAK has actually taken what has kind of been the standard EnviroPAK product for 20 years and done a little bit more with it. So what we're able to do now is we do a product that we call premium finish. It refines the finish on the front side as well as the finish on the back side. It also increases the dimensional stability because we're actually mating it in a set of match metal molds, and the tolerance becomes basically the thickness of the material, which is about 50 thou thick. So it's a pretty tight tolerance. We see that really in the high retail market. We're seeing a lot of that, a lot of the medical interest, and some of the health and beauty kind of cosmetics interest there too. So it does reduce an incidence of dusting as well. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. So the question was, how does, say, an end cap on a device or for any one of the products we showed compared to an expanded polystyrene piece? The biggest advantages and where we see that cost difference is when we start looking at the total cost. So pure material coming out of the factory may be equal or plus or minus in a situation. But when we talk about the fact that a molded EPS piece may only get 1,000 units on a pallet, we talked about up to maybe a 7-to-1 ratio, and so we're going to start getting a 7,000 in that same pallet. Well, we're moving it from our point of manufacture to the point of pack 7 less times. You're moving it from that dock to the workstation 7 less times. And so the density of that packaging basically begins to add to the value and begin to actually accelerate what that difference in the cost is. So it's not typically a situation where straight off of kind of end of manufacturing that can be competitive. But what we have also seen is, like I said, the price stability when you compare that to some of those. We can tend to hold that market cost a lot longer. So. Yeah, the big box stores, the question was, are the big box stores paying attention to what's, the material and the sustainability? Of course, we've all heard about the Walmart scorecard. Walmart, of course, continues to kind of push that envelope, but we're seeing a tremendous amount of other stores as well that are saying, hey, what can we do and what can we have our suppliers do or the providers of our products do to basically make that sustainable product be even more sustainable. So we kind of push the envelope a little bit more, but like anything, you kind of have to keep stepping it up again and again and keep doing that because as with anything, if you're kind of sitting there, things begin to kind of pass you up. And so we are seeing situations where the box stores are starting to kind of push that interest and kind of pushing it to the providers of the product. And that's where we're kind of fitting in. So. With contact with food type. So EnviroPAK does not do direct food contact, but there are some of the manufacturers out there that are doing molded pulp that does do direct food. It's typically a certification within the facility or a coating process. And of course, we're always wanting to make sure that that coating is, of course, food contact. So in that situation, I would invite you over to the Molded Fiber Association. They can give you a little more information on some of those that are approved for food contact. So, and reason why we tend to not do it is those facilities that are approved for food contact tend to stay in the food business, and those that tend to stay not be food contact tend to kind of stay out of it. So we're not paying a premium for the food contact for those that don't require that. So any other questions? Well, appreciate everyone kind of taking a little bit of time today and stopping by. So thank you very much. Have a great show.